I imagine that the only feeling worse than that is probably the feeling that the people got on the poop cruise when they came on the intercom and said, hey, we forgot to buy poop insurance. I don't really have any appropriate set dressing for this video because it's beach themed and I'm not a beach girly, so how do we feel about the off-brand IKEA shark? I decided that if I'm going to be a real booktuber now, I should probably review something recent that people actually care about. So I got on NetGalley and I ended up deciding on a vampire book from 1897. 1898 was a much better year for me personally, but I decided that while I was waiting on that, I'd go ahead and check out Without a Clue by Melissa Ferguson, since it was only published in February this year, so it's just a little bit stale, and I know what you may be thinking. However, I didn't check out this book just because it was available immediately. I checked it out because when I read Colleen Hoover's Woman Down, which you can go watch that review to see my full thoughts on it, I enjoyed the concept, very key part of that, the concept of the romantic suspense, and I did not expect to at all. Now, double featuring Woman Down and this book is a little bit like double featuring Hostel Part 3 and Sesame Street. Not sure why I did that to myself. Before we get into it today, I'm having a bad pain day, so I'm probably going to be kind of mean in this review. So I put filming this video off for 4 hours and I really didn't want to do it, but my hair looks good today, so we got to do what we got to do. Second of all, only 1% of my watchers are subscribed. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. No, but for real, if you end up enjoying this video, then I would recommend subscribing, because while I appreciate all of my subscribers and all of my watchers and everybody who comments on my videos, the YouTube algorithm doesn't do that, and you'll probably never find me ever again. The first scene of this book is inconsequential, not at all funny, and sets us up to believe the exact opposite of what we're supposed to believe about Pip's personality, if she has one. I'm not convinced personally, but it keeps saying that she does, so I guess I'm just gonna have to work under that assumption. In short, she crashes out at a drunk guy who's catcalling her. I don't have a problem with that, for reasonability issues. I think that's a completely reasonable crash out. I have a problem with it because Pip is pitched to the reader through the synopsis and through the other characters throughout the story, as well as the narrative, as this person who doesn't crack under pressure. And there was no reason for this to be the first scene of the book. So we end up with the impression as a reader that Pip is explosive first and then locked in, except she never really locks in. Pip is the assistant to this mystery author named Hugh. Hugh is part of an exclusive group of 7 authors who have all made a deal to promote only each other's books. They only write blurbs for each other, they only do cross promotions for each other, they only do events with each other. I ran this concept by several of my friends just to see if I was being delusional by thinking that was low-key evil and kind of suspect. And they all agreed with me, so I'm not sure what to think of this setup to start with, but I just didn't like it right out of the gate. I was a little daunted by the number of characters we were supposedly going to have, but don't worry, we forget about half of them for most of the book. I will still introduce you to them regardless. I'm going to read off my script here, so I'll be looking down. First we have Nina, a carefree middle-aged romance writer. Then we have Jackie, the stickler who collects pushpins from the 1700s, and no, that plays absolutely no role in the book. She writes historical fiction. Gordon, the nerdy fantasy writer who said maybe 10% of this book total. Crystal, a young adult author that suspiciously made a TikTok about her book idea, and then it blew up, and then she got a movie deal, and also she's kind of dense and vapid. Huh. Who does that remind me of? Fifth is Ricky, the suspicious thriller author who's probably mentioned on a total of 10 pages, so just forget about him entirely. It really doesn't matter. Then we have Nash, the love interest, who writes westerns and wears a cowboy hat. I get it, dude. I'm also autistic. I think that's cool. He's named after Nashville, because of course he is. Of course he's named after the city of country music, because he's a cowboy author. I'm tired, Grandpa. I'm tired of this. And then we have Hugh, the super smart and cool mystery writer who actually employs Pip. I don't know what the working situation between them is. Sometimes she does work for them. Does she get paid for that? Also, he's 75, which is honestly terrifying to think about. You should be retired, dude. You should be out in the club. Why are you still writing books? But he's still employed so that he can employ Pip in turn and put her in situations which I do find very funny. I wish this book was about those instead. Aside here, Pip compares being around a bunch of writers but not writing to being a non-smoker in a group of smokers, and oh my god, I want to break that 7-month streak so bad. I bring it up partially because this is the first time that we misuse in this book, but it won't be the last. These 7 writers are going on a cruise, and also Pip is there because she's the main character. These people are rich because they have a cabin dedicated only to them and Pip, and also, when they have their luggage in the room, somebody comes in and unpacks it for them. Unexpectedly, by the way, which makes it an even stranger detail than it was to start with. I really don't understand this tax bracket and the things that they enjoy. On a semi-related note, somebody kills Hugh. Hashtag awkward. I'm getting ahead of myself though. The night before that, Hugh tells Pip that somebody left him a foreboding note back home, and it was left in a room that's only accessible and known of by the other 6 authors in the group. Not even Pip knew this room existed. Now my question is, why did he get on the boat? Maybe he's not the brightest tool in the shed. Maybe capitalism isn't the reason that he's still working at the ripe age of 75. Maybe it's because his books are just kind of bad. Pip doesn't question why he would do that though, and she understands that the almighty hand of Melissa Ferguson needs her to not be present in the room for the next scenes to be believable. So she goes off and spends the night with Nash. At this point in my script, I had written, Pip is going to have to do a whole lot of changing for me to like her, because this scene in particular was insufferable. And I can assure you that she does not change even a little bit, and I still don't like her. Fast forward to the next day, surprise, Hugh is dead. But surprise again, it's all a prank so they could roleplay a game of Clue in real life. Pip does not like this random roleplay that's been initiated without her full consent. Why am I getting deja vu? But surprise, it wasn't a prank. There's blood everywhere. He's kinda actually dead. That part wasn't planned. Or was it? Cruise security says the one thing that you don't want to hear on the murder cruise, which is, hey, we forgot to buy murder insurance. So we kind of need you to pretend like that didn't happen. I imagine that the only feeling worse than that is probably the feeling that the people got on the poop cruise when they came on the intercom and said, hey, we forgot to buy poop insurance. Personally, I detest when mystery and thriller books aren't realistic about murder. What can I say? I hate fun, I hate joy, and I hate whimsy. I think that there should be less of all 3 in the world. But I understand that this is partially a comedy. This is supposed to be a rom-com of sorts as well as a mystery book. And I just have to say that I don't see what's supposed to be funny. Instead, it just feels detached from reality and feels like the author was being lazy and using the idea of it being a rom-com to cover that up. We once again get assurance that the killer is one of the other authors on board. However, I take issue with that. They are in a secluded cabin that you have to enter with a special access key, and that's given as the reason for us to believe that nobody else could get in there. What about maintenance, though? Maintenance at least has a key to everything on the ship, whether you think they do or not. Also, this is a rich person cruise. Do they not have housekeeping on board? Housekeeping, even if you say no to the service, should also have a copy of every key on the ship, just in case somebody who stays in that room wants housekeeping done. You can't just say that without refuting all of the potential possibilities. I am not Pip, and I do not accept plot convenience as a reason. When it's Pip's turn to be investigated, we get our second mention in this book of just how small and cute she is, because she's only 5 feet tall. Last time I checked, the Pew Pew store doesn't require you to be a certain height to go in and purchase one, but I guess you can waste my time, sure. I kind of love it when authors do that, actually. This fact is solely there because the book is terrified of doing anything unique or creative, and while there are millions of reasons to hate this trope, I'm not going to dig into that in this video because I don't want it to be another hour-long one. I will mention here that if Pip is 5 feet tall, as we are told so many times, that when the book mentions Nash is 1 head taller than Pip, thereabouts, the maximum height he could be is like 5'8". I'm 5'7". Is Nash the first short king I've read about in a romance? Diversity win. Besides that irritation, I've watched a lot of interviews, and this is by far the worst that I've ever been subjected to in a movie, book, or from Iwu Crime Storytime. Both of the characters are the dumbest people on the planet. I don't like to throw around the word dumb when I'm talking about book characters because, well, what makes them dumb? What was a bad decision? What made it a bad decision? It's the same thing as calling a book boring. That is a non-descriptor. There's nothing else I can say here, though, and I feel like their lack of competence is supposed to be funny. It's just annoying. And I'm not laughing, so what's the joke? Nash barges his way into Pip's room that night and is like, hey, since you don't have survival instincts, I'm gonna sleep in here with you. This is the scene where we get that mention that Nash is only like a head taller than her, which took me a while to latch onto, so maybe I shouldn't be yapping about media literacy. Maybe I'm kind of dumb, actually. The two of them see Nina out in the hallway talking to somebody, but they don't know who. That's never really brought up again. I think I know what we're supposed to think, but I'm not going to reveal that to you yet, or ever. I'm going to forget about it by the end of this review. Don't get your hopes up. So they leave to check things out. They come back to the room and, oops, all dead guys. The security chief is dead, and somebody else, I think. I zoned out in this section while I was drawing, and then I tuned back in, and I didn't realize who had been killed in general until they mentioned it again, like a couple paragraphs later. But they never mentioned the second person, so I don't know if there actually was one. Maybe I was just hallucinating. With the head of the investigation dead, Pip decides that she's going to investigate it. So everybody is cooked, and I hope you're all ready to die. Our first interview is Nina, so I am forced to get a little bit woke here and bring up that throughout this book, we play her because she's not actually for laughs. Still absolutely disgusting to think that this should be funny to your reader inherently, you know? Or that it should inherently cast suspicion on her. We are told that Hugh and Nina were engaged in the past and then broke it off, but Nina didn't really want to break it off, and he just died. The man that she was once engaged to, and who was a close friend outside of that for 40-something years, just died. I'm not laughing when you tell me that she is misusing things. I'm going, oh, that makes sense because she's grieving. I don't think that's funny, and I think that you're kind of a piece of if you do. It's perpetuating harmful stereotypes that actively hurt real people, and it's also bad writing because it relies on the reader's preconceived notions that the author is just assuming you have. You have no way of knowing if your reader actually thinks this way. Several days go by after that with Pip being too busy to investigate the murder. So like I said, you're all cooked. The next interview is with Jackie, who's already over Pip's nonsense, and it's at this point that I quit drawing and I started playing bingo. I was really living the cruise ship experience. I won $13. Jackie says it's obvious who the killer is and then just chooses to not elaborate on that at all. Okay, sure. The world's ending. You might as well pronounce the L in salmon. It doesn't matter anymore. Pip poorly interrogates her about useless information like how do you write murder in your books? To which Jackie says that, you know, on account of the fact that she's a middle-aged woman, she's been a writer for over 40 years and has written 36 books. She doesn't really remember all of the plots of her books. Pip is stunned and accuses her of using a ghostwriter, and Jackie says yes, she does use a ghostwriter. I'm going to fast forward and spoil for you that that isn't actually true. So once again, we wasted entire pages on a conversation that relies on the reader being just as much of an idiot as Pip to actually work. Let's just say that Without a Clue is an apt title and also the ideal reader for this book. Also, Jackie has a knife. Okay. They go to the piano bar to give Nash his interview, and Pip thinks to herself, it's so weird we've never had lunch together, but we've been friends for 4 years. Baby, that's just sad. You've been friends for 4 years and you've never had lunch together? It's all these little throwaway sentences in the book that keep catching my attention because of how absurdly out of touch they are. We get it outright said that Nash is the odd one out in this group. He's the one that people have the least connections to. And then I realized I don't know why anyone is in this group. And I also don't really know why any of them are friends, although I feel like we got one or two backstories that I'm just not thinking about because I didn't care enough to remember them. It sounds like Nash had a pretty mid-career before he got contracted into the group, so it's not fame. He didn't really know anybody before he got contracted, so it's not always connection that gets somebody an offer to join the group. It just kind of happened because the plot wanted him to be there, and we were too lazy to think of a good reason for him to be there. Make him somebody's cousin or something. I don't know. I'd prefer nepotism over pulling it out of your... Nash says that he's in love with Pip, and she was at the lunch where they officially asked him and invited him into the group. And if she wasn't there, he would have said no, but he said yes just because he wanted to get closer to Pip, which is kind of crazy. That just doesn't satisfy me, though. Pip gets a migraine and Nash takes care of her, and she's worried that she's not all that Nash thinks she is. And she would be right. So what I'm worried about is, where are Gordon and Ricky? They've barely been in this story, and so had Crystal until basically a paragraph after I wondered where she went off to. Also, while I was writing the script, I genuinely forgot that Ricky was a character. I was tandem writing the script while listening to the audiobook, and I listened to it in one sitting. I was in prime condition to remember all of the little details, and the author mentions this character so little that I still forgot he was there. We mentioned Crystal finally because Nash and Pip investigate her room together, and immediately they find a bloody knife. Instead of Pip's first thought being, well, Jackie also had a knife, so maybe Jackie framed Crystal with a fake bloody knife so that we would look at Crystal instead of her. She just readily accepts that Crystal did it, and they frame her for murder. You know what? I've seen enough. Give that woman a badge and a service and put her out on the street. Also, they could have, gone to the detectives. They didn't all die. They could have gone to one of them. Instead, they start a fire in her room, which really is not treated as seriously as it would be on a cruise ship. Pip drops the information now, of all times, at 71% of the way through the book, that not only did Hugh make her memorize his will, the sole beneficiary is Gordon. You know, one of the characters that I almost forgot existed because he's mentioned so little in the book. Why didn't she start with Gordon? But we only have so much time on this planet, so let's not waste our oxygen asking questions about the book that make total sense. Also, Nash is wearing a cowboy hat, and I just felt like reminding you that he's wearing a cowboy hat on a cruise and also on the cover, and he looks like a twerp because I just feel like being mean right now. I have a cowboy hat. Should I wear it for the rest of this review? It's way too big for me, but we're not gonna address that. Nash is about as country as those 2010s propaganda country songs. So instead of focusing on the singular man that is in the dead guy's will, Pip background checks every guest out of the hundreds that are on the cruise ship. And she's got a little red string Pepe Silva wall going on. It's a whole shebang. You know, it's so cute how dumb she is. And then, because we haven't disrespected the reader's intelligence enough, and we haven't wasted their time enough in this book, we waste 72 hours of this limited time journey. First of all, we get Nina dropping the information that there's only 4 days left, and then, I kid you not, immediately after that, we waste 72 hours. We waste 3 days of this journey in a single sentence. Let me read it to you. Let me read you this sentence. I quote, "In good news, it was just a stomach virus that took hold of me the next 72 hours that gave me the shakedown of my life, not attempted murder." That's a run-on sentence. The next sentence, "When I'm back on my feet, I go straight to Crystal." And we just move on. That's proof that we just move right on after that. Melissa Ferguson, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? Why are people rating this 5 stars? If I wasn't already annoyed with the book at this point, I mean, you can probably tell that this is my favorite part of the whole thing. Anyways, they interview Crystal, and she reveals that she is actually Hugh's secret daughter. I'm just going to reveal to you immediately that this is not true. And I'm going to say that because it's entirely unprecedented, even though nothing really conflicts with this information, it's still a bad twist because it comes out of nowhere. And actually, that's a great microcosm for the rest of the book. Another note on Crystal here is that Pip continues to have these thoughts of, oh my god, this new Crystal is so like mean and snotty and heartless. Yap, 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 you know? But throughout the book, she has had basically the same opinion of her. I'm overstimulated, and I feel like I don't look good in hats, so I'm gonna take this off. Look at it though, isn't it cool? Then Ricky materializes, and he's mysterious about everything because his one personality trait is talking in riddles. And Pip is like, your best friend supposedly just died and you don't even care, which is hilarious. But Ricky immediately humbles her by asking her, well, you're a mentor and the guy that you're supposedly friends with just died, and you're flirting with Nash left and right. You don't seem to care about it either. And instead of actually thinking about that for 2 seconds, she just doesn't care. Pip acts shocked that Ricky is suspicious of Nash when Nash is obviously the most suspicious out of all of them, inherently, because he has the least connections to any of them, and I think he's supposed to be the newest addition to the group. Also, anytime that Pip questions him, I haven't been mentioning it because in the end it doesn't matter, and I'm not here to waste all of your time, but Nash dodges the question every time she asks about the murder. Point being, there are farm animals more capable of figuring this all out than Pip. And I don't know how she got this job because she is the prime target for Nigerian prince phishing emails. Ricky has a letter from Hugh because, of course, Hugh knew who was going to do it before they actually did it, and he just chose not to do anything with that information besides write cryptic letters for Pip to find. We wouldn't have a book if Pip questioned all of the things that need questioning in this book. So Ricky gives it to her and she lollygags around before actually opening it. And surprise, surprise, Hugh's suspicious of Nash. Hugh says Nash is the most likely to do it. It's really convoluted, so don't worry about why this twist is dog rear, because Pip doesn't worry about it either. She literally doesn't care. She keeps hanging out with Nash. Like, I don't... So, first things last, they interview Gordon. You know, the guy in the will. The sole beneficiary. If I wasn't already in a lot of pain, I'd be in pain now. Except Pip writes him off as the least likely, for some reason. Did you sneak onto this earth? How are you still alive, Pip? Penelope? I'm gonna use your full legal name, Penelope. Whatever. None of it matters. After Gordon's non-answers, Pip is satisfied enough to play video games and drink Shirley Temples with him. She reconvenes with Nash and finally forms a thought, which is, am I kind of a bad person for not taking it seriously when Hugh said he thought somebody was gonna kill him? Yes! Yes, you are. That's the first time you've been right in this entire book. Fast forward, she finds a letter from Hugh, and this is what it says. Bravo, Pip. I knew you would do it. You will find me and end the game when you give me what I want. Tell our story. It was all an elaborate prank. Just like we were told at the start of the book, and it backtracked, and you might have been thinking to yourself, like, oh, is that going to be the twist at the end? Oh, it couldn't be. That's really dumb. This entire book could have been an email. Not even one that's like long and dense enough that you have to open it up on your laptop to really soak it in properly. No, this got sent from my iPhone at the end of it. But it gets worse because I withheld from you the fact that many times throughout the book, we get mentions that everybody in the group wants Pip to become a writer, but especially Hugh. Hugh thinks she has this untapped potential, and I agree, she has potential, it's very untapped, and it will remain that way. She's been working on a book for a couple of years now, and when she sits down, because she figures out after far too many guesses that what Hugh wants is for her to write the story that they've been playing out with her without her knowing. Why does this sound so familiar? He wants her to write that as the first chapter of a book. And when she does that, it all ends and it's all over, and she can deck him in the face. I only wish she had that much of a spine. Nash glazes her analytical skills. Meanwhile, as a reader, I get the impression that she couldn't pour out of a boot if the instructions were written on the bottom. So I don't know where he's getting all that from. They go to a lounge on the cruise ship and find out that Hugh's been singing there the whole week and everybody's in on it. Hugh makes Pip get on stage and she's got her laptop so that she can show him the first draft of her novel. She didn't even print it out. She didn't find a printer or anything. She gets on stage with her laptop and she hands it to Hugh. And Hugh reads the first chapter. Mind you, he's 75 years old. He probably wears glasses and his vision probably sucks, whether he does or not. So he's probably standing there like squinting at this screen, hunched over, holding it, trying to figure out what it says. And also, he's 75. So he's probably standing there like that for a full 15 minutes. And everyone's just completely silent, which is a really funny mental image to me. But he reads it and he gets the microphone. He's like, guys, it's so good. And everybody claps. Everybody claps. We got the answer in the first quarter of the book, and then it lies to you progressively worse and worse in the next 3 quarters of the book and expects you to be okay with that. No, I hated it. This was awful. Also, Hugh says that they told everybody on board that this was going to be going on. So that explains how Hugh was able to secretly pull off workshops and, skill sessions and all this stuff on the board so that nobody had to miss out on what they paid for. But I actually have a problem with that because Nash originally was supposed to be in on it and then they just didn't do that. So he wasn't aware of it. And he was also giving talks and skill workshops and all this stuff throughout the course of the book, supposedly. I don't know. He spent a lot of time with Pip doing nothing. How did he not notice Hugh? It would have been very likely. Like, this is a very confined space. It would have been very likely that he bumped into Hugh. Not only that, if everybody on board was in on it, and the original plan was for Nash to also be in on it, how did nobody out of the hundreds not email Nash something that would give it away? Because they were told not to email Pip, and I guess the ship has sailed, not to make a terrible pun on this book's setting. I guess the ship has sailed as far as my previous held beliefs that, you couldn't possibly have hundreds, if not thousands of people in on a secret, and they just wouldn't say anything. But I still hate it. Then we get to the epilogue because Pip is so smart and her book is so awesome and she's really cool and awesome. She becomes the 8th member of the 7th group. It is now the 8th, I guess. I don't know. They don't really give it a quirky title this time. I was going to try to do this review standing up even though I hurt really bad, but I hurt way too much. So we're gonna get this done sitting. To start this review, I typically review themes and symbolism before I get into the nitty-gritty, and the fact that I have nothing to talk about here should tell you how superficial this book is in general. I genuinely cannot scrape a single through line out of this book. And although I don't believe that a book needs to be meaningful to be enjoyable, if you're neither one of those things, that's simply unacceptable to me. It's partially a rom-com and partially a mystery. So basically from every angle, we were guaranteed to have characters that are just stereotypes. And I don't have a problem with that, if an author handles it well. It's handled so poorly in this book that it's just inexcusable. And Hugh in particular is so corny that at the end of the book, it feels like an extra middle finger in your face. I struggled to care about every character in the book, but especially Pip, which isn't great because she's the main character of the book. I didn't relate to her at all, which is not an objective point against the book. What is, though, is the fact that there is nothing of substance to her character. The very thing that her character is based on that's supposed to make the story work, the fact that she doesn't crack under pressure, is not even one of her character traits throughout the book. And she seemingly doesn't care about Hugh. And not caring about a situation does not equate to being good under pressure. It only qualifies her as a poorly written character with no dimension. I opened this bag expecting there to be a dead dove inside, and instead there's strawberry yogurt. Also, despite the fact that she mentions various experiments throughout the book that he was put her through, things like taste testing poison so he can write it better, just crazy stuff. She's the most unadventurous character I've ever had to read about. How that dichotomy can exist within one character, I'm really not sure. I think that Melissa Ferguson is better at writing concepts than she is at writing actual fleshed out stories. Because of the lack of substance to the writing itself and also to Pip's character, the fact that she just got out of an 8-year relationship is kind of unbelievable. It's not handled in a way that gives it really any weight at all, and by the end of the book, she's completely forgotten about it. I feel like after an 8-year relationship that ended in cheating, her boyfriend cheated on her, you would have a couple of complexes that would take longer than one book to solve, but what do I know? Also, he was her teacher in college, still weird, and he cheated on her with a younger woman. So Fork found in kitchen. And given that he was her professor, we could have had some opportunity to give Pip more of a personality by giving her some underlying issues that might make her more vulnerable to being in a dynamic like that. Because her ex is definitely the kind of person to abuse his power over somebody. And we don't do that. And I feel like it was right there, so that's especially disappointing. Also, he cheated on her on a Jumbotron at his sports game. We definitely, I forgot all about that detail, and I just remembered it. We definitely did not give that the treatment that it needed. Given this, I would understand when she's self-conscious, but those parts are done so poorly and with so little tact that it's obvious that the author realized Pip can't always win, so maybe she should lose inside of her own brain a couple times. Pip is genuinely the most obtuse protagonist I've ever had to read about in a book. I would prefer if she was a terrible person to just flat out being incompetent. Because when you write that kind of character into a murder mystery, I spend the entire book angry. If your plot only works because your character is a nincompoop, your plot just doesn't work. Nash does not escape my cruelty because he is a nothing burger as well. His singular trait is being nonchalant. Doing the bare minimum is his hobby. I guess he's also a cowboy, but honestly, even that doesn't really come up a whole lot after the first quarter of the book. I feel like the author completely forgot every characteristic that was supposed to be written into the book after about that 35% mark, roughly. He and Pip have about as much chemistry as an English major's curriculum, which I can't really fault Pip for because I imagine it's probably difficult to romance a cardboard cutout of a man, who in part only seems charming because 1, he's familiar, 2, your ex cheated on you on a Jumbotron at a sports game. The story is so quick-paced, superficial, and begins so late into these characters' journey with each other that I simply don't believe that they've known each other for 4 years. The yearning that goes on here is not the kind of yearning I would expect or want to see from a couple that has been in the trenches of it for 4 years. Also, what's the ship name? Pash? Nip? Their ship name's Nip. I just decided it for you guys right now. Random and absurdist humor is not funny to me. Just flat out. Don't consult my Instagram reels on that. But it lacks personality, there's no thought put into it, and in an age of AI, you can rest assured that only a human being that understands what whimsy and joy truly is and knows what those feel like could ever create something so soulless and boring. The same can be said of the writing, in a sense. It's boring, it's repetitive, and it lacks poetry. It's not even pretty. It has 0 redeeming qualities, I guess, is what I'm trying to say about the whole thing. Beyond the humor, the plot suffers in a similar way as the characters, where we set the story up to be stereotypical at first, and then have a payoff where it gets more creative later. At least in my opinion, that's what I went into this expecting, because I thought there's no way that you're just going to tell the same story that has been told in 50 other books and do it worse. On purpose, and unfortunately that's what we did. The author knew that things weren't going to be all that serious in the end, So decided to write it with a comedic tone and a lighthearted one that really does not fit the premise of the story. And you could make it a dark comedy, absolutely. I think that that would have been way more enjoyable of a route to go. But we just don't make the characters care enough about the fact that their extremely close friend that they've known for several decades is dead. Brutally, by the way. Like, assumedly stabbed because everybody has knives, I guess. Like, that's a horrible way to go. Because, mind you, while everybody else could be acting unserious, I guess, to a degree, and you would get to the end and not feel this way, Pip believes that all of this is real. She believes that it's 100% real. She believes that her mentor that she's known and trusted for 5 years, and also the man she works for, who her paycheck depends on, even if she could find work easily elsewhere, that's, a new routine. That's a major disruption in her life. What if they don't pay her the same? Yada, yada, yada. She's not worrying about these things. She's not grieving about these things. The most positive thing that I can say about the book is that Nash is nice to Pip. It's really sad that that's where the bar is. It's not so offensively bad that I would hearken to call this slop, but if somebody else called it slop, I would not disagree with them at all. It's full of tropes, stereotypes, overdone plot beats, and as I've said in other reviews, you can reinvent the wheel. But if it falls apart before you're finished, I'm not going to congratulate you for doing so. I really wish that I read this genre more often so that I could at least tell you a book I think does it well and give you something else to read in place of this one. But unfortunately, I don't. I'm on that journey now. I'm trying to find it with you. So if you would like to join me on that journey, then feel free to subscribe and turn the notifications on by clicking that little bell icon so you'll never miss a new video from me. I also announce what's coming up in my community tab every week, so make sure you check that out. This week's announcement was kind of late because I didn't get to record this until Sunday. Liking this video and commenting is a great way to let me know that you enjoyed it and you want more like it. And if you have a recommendation for this genre that you would like to share with me or just anybody else who's watching this, then please feel free to leave it down below. You can find me on the StoryGraph at bucksface, Etsy at TheBadBazaar, and I'm Palicky on Instagram. I post art on there. Thanks for watching, even though the energy kind of took because I hurt and I'm losing my voice, so I genuinely cannot be louder than this right now. Auf Wiedersehen. Actually, I lied because I went to the thrift store with my friend the other day and I found two of the most amazing books ever. It cost not even $2 to buy both of these. The first one is Bite Me by Shelley Lawrenston, and I got it because that cover is fantastic. But also, it says on the back, when you shapeshift into a honey badger, getting through life's irritants is a finely honed skill. And when I opened it up, it was... So I guess we'll see how that goes. And the second one is by Carolyn Brown, who I have seen book reviews of before. And it's called My Give a Damn's Busted.